the poison that they used was so effective that while I was eating, I confronted him, why are you killing me?
So you were feeling, before you could finish the plate?
Yes. It was excruciating pain on the abdominal.
Yeah,
so one of the things we must be able to do as Swazis is not to be obsessed about apportioning blame. We must look at the behavior and conduct of Swazi activists who run away to South Africa once they are in South Africa. Do they still dedicate themselves, to their energies, their resources to the liberation of their homeland, or they find a new home in South Africa and get comfortable? No. Royal supremacy will end. And the monarch would have, if the people decides to retain it, it will have a budget that will be passed by parliament. If it decides to exceed that budget by collecting wives like he's collecting trophies, he will have to find a job and work and supplement whatever that will be a shortfall. But we are not going to have a man who's just going to be buying expensive cars every other second week and building palaces and collecting concubines and expect us as the taxpayers to finance it. That will not happen. So that will end. We expected South Africa at least to say to Swaziland, we are not going to undermine the territorial integrity of South Africa. Even ourselves, when suspected criminals elope to your country, we follow due process. You are currently involved in the extradition of AKA suspected killers. We are following the due process.
To go through that process. Welcome to another episode of The People's Eye. I am with Mr. Mlungisi Makhanya, all the way from the Kingdom of eSwatini. He is president of the People's United Democratic Movement, Pudemo. We're going to talk a lot about the state of politics in his home country, the struggle that they've been engaging in for many years. Remember, political parties are still banned in eSwatini. So it's been a struggle for Pudemo and other pro-democracy political formations. Mr. Makhanya, welcome to the People's Eye podcast, and thanks for making yourself available.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sizwe, and congratulations on establishing such a very powerful platform. I am an ardent follower of the People's Eye, and I have watched it grow. And I always urge my fellow comrades to subscribe and follow, because I think it is very informative and very educational. And we can only wish you and the People's Eye all the best, Mr. Yenda.
Thanks very much. Thanks a lot. That's encouraging. It's a struggle, but we'll try to work hard and make it really work to give people to give a voice to the people, especially those who cannot get a voice, in the mainstream media. And thanks a lot for being here. Without wasting much time, let's get to the matters here. Maybe just a brief background of yourself. You are the president of Pudemo. Pudemo, I think, was formed in 1983.
Yes.
Well, this was after political parties had been banned in the country. When did you join Pudemo? When did your activism start, that spark?
Well, I joined Pudemo around 93. I was doing Form 2 at a school in Babane called St. Francis.
Yes.
And I would have to qualify that, because you cannot join Pudemo at the age of 14. And around that time, I was around the age of 14.
Okay.
But I had joined the student movement.
Oh, okay.
Now, the student movement was working very close with the Swaziland Youth Congress, which is the youth league of Pudemo, and that by extension also with Pudemo. But at that time, how we were introduced to the whole thing was to the student movement.
Okay.
But in terms of being politically conscientized, I grew up in a township, or rather a location, really, in Mbaban, in the outskirts of Mbaban, called Msunduza.
Okay.
The conditions there were quite terrible. So just the conditions around me as a young man were conscientizing. But also it was a very good space to grow up in, because we had a significant population of Mozambicans who in the 80s, growing up in the early 80s, having born in the 70s, growing up in the in the 80s.
Yes.
But also we had a number of South Africans who were there. And all these Mozambicans and South Africans who were in the space were people who were involved in their struggles in their own native countries.
Yeah.
So there would be a lot of raids. I remember vividly in one's early schooling days when we were going to school, police would come, at times accompanied by soldiers, primarily looking for Mozambicans and some ANC-linked operatives.
Yes.
So looking at how they were treating them, particularly the Mozambicans, was quite something that was extremely unsettling. If not uprightly upsetting for me. And that in itself conscientized me. So when Swayoko began its activities, having been founded in 1991, so it would have a lot of campaigns in the location, cleanup campaigns, and they will sing revolutionary songs, and then they will sort of try and engage us as a young teenager at the time. So you get excited to join these things, and before you know it, you listen to the explanation. The founding president of Swayoko, Comrade Benedict Titiza Tabeta, and the Secretary General, who was a teacher, I think it was Amos Malambe at the time, I remember in one rally, where they explained in a way that really resonated with me, the suffering that we're going through, why it is man-made, but also how the royal family living large is actually subsidized and funded by us, the poorest of the poor. And my mother being someone who is working in the informal sector, at the market, also will narrate the stories of the protest of the mid-60s. I think there was, in the mid-60s, a lot of successive strikes by the trade union movement, workers demanding upondo ngelanga. So all those sort of things conscientize me. And from there, I've never looked back. I joined the revolution and I've given it my all.
Yeah, true. And studying at 14, then were you able to finish school in Swaziland and maybe even tertiary before you...
Yes, I finished school in Swaziland. Well, I got expelled from St. Francis, where I was studying after Form 3. Then I had to complete my school at Mochane because at that time I was really at the forefront of the Swaziland Association of Students, which is an equivalent of COSAS here.
Yes.
There was just no ways the institutions of higher learning would have accepted me. I had been arrested a couple of times. So I had to come to South Africa to pursue my tertiary studies, which I did with the Rand Afrikaans University, which is now University of Johannesburg.
Okay.
So my tertiary schooling and my subsequent starting to work all happened in South Africa, because in 1998,
yes,
we had elections there. And as the Swaziland Youth Congress, at the time I had finished school, so I was now a national leader of Pudemo Youth League, occupying the position of National Organizing Secretary. We ran a very powerful anti-election campaign. Okay. And I remember there was an interview by the SAPC that got me into trouble, and myself, with some of the comrades, including the then president of Swayoko, Comrade Bongan Masugu, Comrade Pomensela, Comrade Philmon Ilkele, and a number of the key activists of the time. We had to flee to South Africa in 1998, which is then was the time that I decided that I must also enroll in South Africa and study at tertiary with the Rand Afrikaans University.
Oh, okay. Well, what
did I did political science.
Oh, political science.
Yes.
So obviously the spark was
yes,
already lit. Okay. So since 1998, you've been in South Africa. Are you banned in Swaziland? Or?
No. So I went back to Swaziland. I remember I went back in Swaziland when I was a student. So when I got there, I was arrested, but I was only detained for 4 days, and I was released without making any court appearance. And then ever since, I will then go to Swaziland in and out. Remember, I was now a student, so there was no way I would go back there full time. I had to pursue and complete my studies. So I had to go back to Swaziland. So I was going in and out of Swaziland. Okay. And that helped in terms of one being able to make his own humble contribution. But we were encouraged when we got here by comrades here to say, comrades, so that you can even be capacitated more, find a way of participating in the student movement here, in the ANC Youth League, so that you can learn some of the most important strategies and tactics that you need to strengthen your struggle in Swaziland. And I must say that indeed helped a great deal. So one participated in SASCO, at the university, one participated in the Youth League, and in ANC structures here, where we were able also to establish a relationship with these comrades, some of them who are occupying strategic positions now in the state, in the private sector, and in the public sector bureaucracy. So I think that helped a great deal. So from there, I then in 2011, I got elected as the National Political Commissar of Pudemo, which was a Central Executive Committee member, not just a National Executive Committee member. I served in that position until 2014, when I was elected Secretary General. I served as Secretary General between 2014 up to 2018, when I was elected President after our founding President, the late President Mario Masuku, felt that he has run his race, and owing to failing health, he thinks that it's time now to hand over the baton, which really was quite an overwhelming
Exactly. I was about to ask, were you not scared? Because we know Mario Masuku, the strugglist, he has had to go through being imprisoned, being persecuted all his life. I mean,
I was, frankly. So I was scared because remember, I had served with him for 4 years as Secretary General. I had also served with him 3 years as National Political Commissar. So I knew what it meant to be a Pudemo president. But also to succeed a man who had led the organization as long as President Mario had led Pudemo. It was a scary, scary thought. I remember just before the elections,
yes,
I pleaded with Congress that can we have an adjournment? I really want to have an engagement with President Mario where I was trying to persuade him to say, please, President, I think you must remain as president. I'm happy to play a deputy president role, and I will step in as and when your health is really taking a dive. So, but he had made his mind. He said to me and said to the entire Congress, comrades, I have discussed with my family this. They have been urging me actually to consider this because you would remember, President Mario's health had been in a state of a decline for over a decade at the time, following all the ill treatment and successive arrests and beatings he had to endure when he's hospital, when he's leading those rallies. And so it was not possible for me, and it was not possible for us as a collective to persuade him otherwise. So comrades said, no, we think Secretary General, having served with the president, at least he will still be there to guide you. And I benefited immensely coming in 2018 and having President Mario at least there for almost 3 years. So because I could always defer to him and ask him. And when I try and knock in certain doors and the question that they ask is that, where is Mario? I will then be able to go to him and say, President, could you please tell those people that I have your blessings? It was quite a helpful period. But it was a challenge, I must say.
But were you expecting it? I mean, I don't know what was the system, what was his leadership style in terms of grooming successors? Were you expecting it, or you were just taken aback by the decision of the Congress to elect you?
To be honest with you, I wasn't actually, because President Mario had sensitized me as his Secretary General that he was not coming back. So the first comrade we went to was our former Secretary General, Comrade Thulan Maseko, who had been imprisoned 2014 for almost 2 years. So Congress is 2018. He had just come out in 2016. We had a successive trips to his homestead, really pleading with him to think that Comrade Thulan, we think also from a generational point of view. Your generation should be the one that ascend and replace President Mario. And at first, Comrade Thulan had given us a sense that he was considering it very seriously. But he sat down with me outside the collective that we were approaching him with, which included the now Deputy President, Comrade Wandile Lulu, Comrade Penuel Malinga, who's the Secretary General now. So he sat with me and said, you know, I am having this one-on-one on you because I was one of those comrades who recruited you in 1993. have suffered a lot during the period of my incarceration. My law firm has taken a huge knock. I think also my wife, who had to hold the fort, needs a bit of a break. The thought of me just coming out and then assuming again such a responsibility, I think, but I actually think you must be the president. Now, come to think of it, I mean, primarily I reside in South Africa. So I say to these comrades, how does Pudemo have a president who is in South Africa? Yeah. President Mario was a permanent feature in protests. We can't have a president who will not be present and lead from the front. We are renowned as a movement for having a leadership that is present. So how is this going to work out? I just don't see it working out. It is when we are Secretary General, because it's by and large a lot of administrative issues. Yeah. But something had happened positive with my being out of the country. You know, in Swaziland is a very small country. It's very easy for that regime to economically shut you down and economically disseminate you. So being outside the country meant that I was able to build a personal financial base that came handy for the movement. So, for instance, when we were arrested in 2014 for merely wearing Pudemo t-shirts, when we were in court supporting Comrade Tulane and Peggy Makubu, we needed to challenge that legislation, the Suppression of Terrorism Act. And we needed to bring South African advocates. They don't come cheap. So my liquidity came handy in terms of ensuring that I make my modest contribution to reviving Pudemo, to paying legal fees, to making sure that we support our comrades who are in prison and a variety of other things, but also even in terms of mobility, you know, because at times there may be opportunities, but you need to get yourself there. So in that cloud, there was a silver lining. And that is what Comrade Tulane said. You know, that has come as a much needed intervening measure. And we think that we must continue on that path. And so, yes, I reluctantly accepted. After other comrades, I think they may have engaged other leaders to consider. But I must end by saying this, because this really pained me. I don't know what is the best way to say this. As a generation, we always felt that Comrade Mario was betrayed by his generation and peers, because it is very difficult for one to understand. President Mario, who was a founding president of Pudemo in 1983. I participate in the auxiliaries of Pudemo a decade later. How does it happen that Comrade Mario gets to serve with our generation? Where were the comrades who founded Pudemo with him? Who needed to anchor him and make sure that they support him? And only very few remained. I mean, one can think of Comrade Zodwa Mkhonda, an unbelievable comrade, who, notwithstanding being a founding member of Pudemo, was humble enough to agree to serve as my deputy president. Because again, she had said, no, SG, I'm not willing to be president. But I'm very happy to be a deputy to you. So I feel that part of the thing that has delayed our struggle was that the generation that started this mission with President Mario
gave up along the way.
gave up along the way, prioritized their own lives, and literally left President Mario at sea. And he persevered in an unbelievable way. And every time when we think of giving up, we then start saying, but we can't do this to President Mario. We can't do this, to Comrade Mbandlana Shong. There are a few others who remained, but there was a lot who left him.
Yeah, it is telling that you, as in politics, you are very young.
Yeah.
You could ascend to this position. It means there was not enough a pool of people to choose from. Yes, I understand the deputy president was humble enough to say, I can, you can lead me, even though you come from the younger generation. But it means there was not enough pool to choose from. Yeah, very interesting. Let us move on. I want us to get into exactly what is wrong with eSwatini. Is it the monarch himself? Is it the system? The whole government system there? Well, what is actually the problem?
Well, it will be very important when one attempts to understand the issue of Swaziland or eSwatini to go to the genesis of the problem. I always say to people, the challenges of eSwatini are not fundamentally different from the challenges that you faced here in South Africa. You'd remember anyway, eSwatini was part of South Africa for 5 years during its history. Now, we come from a history where the native Swazis were dispossessed and alienated from their native land, where over 80% of Swaziland were farms concessioned by King Mswati, which meant that the native got to occupy 20% of the land. And that land that they got to occupy, it follows that it was not arable land. So
similar.
So you would have the similar patterns. So I'm bringing this so that there can be a clear understanding of what is the Swazi grievance, because I understand your questions to be really about that. So the grievance of the Swazi has always been that the Swazi believed that at the defeat of settler colonialism, what was expropriated from them will be restored. So there was an understanding that land will be equitably redistributed to the people so that we can resume the prosperous agricultural production we have been involved in. By the way, Swaziland was central in the supply of maize meal to the Witwatersrand in the early years of the establishment of the mining in South Africa. We exported a lot of our yellow mealie meal via the Lorenzo Marcus port, which is today Maputo. So Swazi is because of the good soil and the good rainfalls that we had, and the general population that never really had a problem with doing work and producing. So when 1968 came, that expectation that we would have our land back, we would have our
farm again produce
minerals, because remember, one of the oldest mines you find in Swaziland, your Ngwenya iron ore, your Bulembu, asbestos mining. I mean, in Swaziland we had legislations that prohibited the native Swazi from involving themselves in any meaningful trade, including pawn shops, running pawn shops. So what you experience here in the main is what we experienced in Swaziland. So came 68, Swazis thought, wow, finally, The gold of Poponyane coal mine will now be mine and benefit us as the native people of Swaziland.
Yes.
Unbeknown to them, the royal aristocracy decided 5 years into our political independence from settler colonialists, decided to pass the 1973 decree wherein the king assumed absolute control of all really the facets of our life. And this is upsetting because it was not the king who led the independence struggles in Swaziland.
Yeah.
It was ordinary Swazis through their then political formations. I mean, that's where the history of the Ingwane National Liberatory Movement, the issue of the Progressive Party of Dr. J.J. Kulu, and a number of political parties who embarked in a series of struggles, particularly in the 1960s.
Yes.
That led to no less than 3 constitutional making commissions because people were engaging in a struggle saying we want our own independence. Now, when I was talking about the stories that my mother used to relay of the struggles of the 1963, it was the workers in the sugar belt, workers in the city, workers in the mines, in Blembo mines, who embarked in a series of struggle that saw the settler British colonialists actually bringing no less than 650 white riot police officers from Kenya to come to physically break the strikes. And a lot of Swazis, in terms of the number of that time, were injured and arrested, and some lost their lives during that period. So our people engaged in that struggle for independence.
But what was the stance of the royal family at that time?
Very, very interesting question indeed. The stance of the royal family was to side with the settler aristocrats. In actual fact, the king sent emissaries to go and speak to striking workers to try and persuade them to go back to work.
Wow.
And he was defied. Wow. And he was defied. He was never on the side of the people. He was defied. And that's when then the settler colonialists said to him, if you would want to contest in the political administration space, you would have to establish your own political party, because we are not going to hand over power to a family or an individual. We would hand over power to an elected political organization. And that is how he then founded the Imbokodo National Movement, which was his party.
Okay. That's King Soposa.
That's King Soposa, yes. That's King Soposa. So that party in the 1967 elections won a majority of the constituents, because it was first past the poll. So it got over 80% of the votes, but literally winning all constituencies, which meant in essence that they got 100%, because the other political parties couldn't win any constituents, so they did not have any parliamentary representation.
So the outcome of that election at that time, in your opinion, it showed that Mswati want to keep the monarchy system, or they were just loyal to their monarch, their king.
Well, it will be very important to distinguish that when the Swazis were fighting against these British settler colonialists, they were never seeing that fight as the fight against the monarch. Notwithstanding that the monarch was not actively supporting the method, because the monarch was supporting the call for independence, full political sovereignty and everything else. But he was not in favor of the method that he saw as radical. Strikes, protests. So the king was never necessarily pro-colonialization. He was simply not in favor of the method that in his eyes were radicals. So even those who were engaged in that method actually never saw it as an anti-monarch stance. Now, what then is of keen interest is that the people, having believed that the king is on their side, and thus they supported the party of the king, because he was very smart. He never became a face of that party. So he insisted that I am the king of all Swazis. So is a party he founded and supported from the background, and have Mabandla, have Makosini, who then be the face of that party. He was not the face of that party. So he retained sort of a non-partisan stance. Now, but the people's experience with the King's Party between 67 and 72 made them to realize that the king does not necessarily have our interest. And in the sort of developed constituents, which was the southern part that is your sugar belt, up to a part of what is today Shiselweni. It was one constituent. It was won by the opposition. So each constituent had 3 seats. So there were 24/7 seats that were born out of constituencies. So each constituency has 1 seat. So when the opposition won in 72, it meant that for the first time, Parliament would have opposition. And there were attempts by the king to try and sabotage that, firstly by accusing the candidates for the opposition of not being Swazis. Abongwenya were accused of being Mozambicans. Even Zwane, who was leading the opposition, the Ngwane National Liberatory Congress, was accused of being South African. But the courts fortunately ruled in favor of the opposition. And that's why in 73, on the 12th of April, the king decided that no, this thing of opposition is going to grow. What I need to do is to usurp the constitution and impose a decree, and under the auspices that these political parties are actually implanting and importing bad practices and causing unnecessary tensions and fights amongst my people. And he assumed legislative, judicial and executive powers, dissolve parliament, effectively imposing a state of emergency. But as I end on this point, in the decrees of 1973, because it was not just one decree. Most troubling was decree number 6 for me. Because what decree number 6 did, the king moved ownership of the land, which the settler British colonialists had bequeathed to the Swazi state, to the government, to him in his personal capacity.
All the land
that was under the ownership of the state. He took the ownership to the king in his personal capacity. Remember also that we had especially strategic urban land that was said to be crown land. So even during settler colonialism, it was the land that the royal family or the queen had said, no, this one you don't touch. This is the Queen's land. So it was called crown land. Again, Swazis anticipated that upon attaining independence, that crown land will come back to the collective ownership of Swazis under the control of a democratically elected state. Instead, crown land up to the state is Mswati's land. The royal crown got replaced by the native crown, and we're talking about prime land here. So exactly. The grievance of the Swaz is those things. Again, mineral ownership, mineral rights. Instead of being bequeathed to the ownership of the state, it's bequeathed to private ownership of the king. Game life. Swazis don't have rights to enjoy game life because game belongs to the king. So that's why one of the serious offenses you could be charged with in Swaziland if you were to be found with a carcass of a game life, let alone an impala that you would have, even if it roams your private farm, game life belongs to the king.
You can't hunt you.
No, you can't.
Yeah, okay. You see, very important history that you have just told me about. Because most people, younger generation, we don't know exactly before King Mswati III what happened, what led to this situation now. But now, you are Swati, obviously.
Yes.
Most of us, we are Zulu, we are what? We traditionally had kings. We still have kings. In case of Swaziland, Amaswati, Amasutu, Abatswana, in my opinion, I think those are the people who actually won because they were able to keep their countries. Unlike the Zulus, they don't have a country. And other ethnic groups. But now, my question is basically, according to Pudemo, does Swaziland need a monarchy?
Well, our position as Pudemo has always been this. It will be the people of Swaziland themselves, having experienced life under a monarch, who under a conducive environment will decide if they still need a monarch, and if they do, in what form or shape. It is not for us as an organization to declare that the people need a monarch. And we're saying this, since we're very mindful of the fact that Pudemo has no interest outside the interest of the people of Swaziland.
Okay.
So at all material times, ours will always mirror the people's interests. Now, one may ask, what becomes the role of a monarch? And it is again important when we answer that question that we don't cloud the objective and the subjective factors. Because you may have a monarch who's very responsive to people's cries, who appreciates that he is a monarch because of the people, who understands that what he presides over is not his, but it belongs to the people, and is just a vessel for the people. So in such a setup, the people's experience with a monarch will be completely different from a monarch who says, everything here belongs to me. A monarch who, when people are literally asking for a right to submit pieces of paper in the form of a petition, he will stop that. And when they protest against such, he will deploy soldiers and police and correctional service officers to go and kill them indiscriminately. If they have a monarch who will jail people for lengthy jail term simply for speaking out in parliament, if they have a monarch who's going to demolish their homesteads and take their land and livestock, they will make a decision based on how they have experienced a monarch. So we are not a party that is saying we are demanding a republic. Nor are we a party that says we are demanding a retention of a kingdom. We're simply a party that says the people of Swaziland, having experienced all, will sovereignly decide what would happen to the institution of the monarch. And we as an organization, we will abide by what the people are saying. But I must end by saying this. I do not see, at least the incumbent. I do not see a future that includes the incumbent. The incumbent has committed grave atrocities against the people. The incumbent has literally sold away strategic resources of our country. The incumbent has imposed and ruined many lives of our people. One of the things that don't get spoken about when we talk about what the incumbent is doing is that every single day in Swaziland we lose lives unnecessarily because of a collapsed healthcare. The predecessor to the current king was no saint, make no mistake. In fact, most of the challenges we face today were started by him. But he never had a private hospital that will attend just to him, his wives and kids. He never spent resources the way that this one is spending resources, leading a life of opulence and condemning the rest of us. He built institutions. This one is a destroyer. He has destroyed tertiary education in Swaziland. We used to pride ourselves. And that university, the main state university, has got a lot of graduates who graduated there, who are playing decisive economic
roles
and governance roles in the region, in the continent, and in the world. You look at it today. It gets closed because water bill has not been paid, electricity has not been paid, it's dilapidated. He leaves students of poor Swazis without allowances. He goes to foreign countries and he gives 9,000 emalangeni to foreign students who are studying there, who most of them we know are children of the elites, by the way, and of his own relatives. So I do not know. I'm expressing my own view. It may be that Swazis feel differently, but I don't see this one having a role in the future if we want to build a truly united, prosperous and democratic Swaziland.
But now the issue of the monarch, you leaving it to the population to decide on whether they still want the system or not. They want a monarch or not. Should things change? Or, as you said, in what form or shape the monarch should operate? But I'm just tempted to ask you the same question again, because now rephrase it. What can we expect from a Pudemo government? Let's say some miracle happens and there are elections, political parties are unbanned, you participate as Pudemo, you win. What can we expect? What kind of a government?
Well, thank you, Sizwe, for that clarity. One of the things that we are clear about is that we will abolish royal supremacy. Now, the question was about the monarch. And you know, there is the monarch the institution. I mean, we have got monarchies here in South Africa. Then the Belis have got their own monarch.
Exactly, yeah.
But royal supremacy, where the monarch enjoys the powers that he enjoys today, where the monarch does not pay tax, where the monarch is above the law, where the monarch is not subjected to rules like all of us, will not apply under a Pudemo government. And for us as Pudemo, those things are not even up to Swazis. Those things form the core reason why we're involved in the struggle. We're involved in the struggle because we want to abolish Tingundla royal supremacy. And we have no doubt in our minds that these are the aspirations of the overwhelming majority of Swazis. I thought we were strictly talking about the existence of the monarch, like the Zulus have got King Mrs. Zulu there. And so the vendors have got their own king. But when we talk about royal supremacy, no, royal supremacy will end. And the monarch would have, if the people decides to retain it, it will have a budget that will be passed by parliament. If it decides to exceed that budget by collecting wives like he's collecting trophies, he will have to find a job and work and supplement whatever that will be a shortfall. But we are not going to have a man who's just going to be buying expensive cars every other second week and building palaces and collecting concubines and expect us as the taxpayers to finance it. That will not happen. So that will end. Definitely such a thing is not going to obtain.
What role will he play in the Pudemo government? What role? If just a symbolic role, or
he will play a very insignificant symbolic role. There may be certain practices that Swazis feel very strongly, for instance, that we want to continue with. Umhlanga, let me give you an example.
Yes.
And then we would have obviously a place where such an activity will take place. Though I must say that it can't continue in its current form, where it dehumanizes young girl, where it becomes a royal sex party for royal family members and security forces. It will be a display and a celebration that will, at the core, humanize young girls as opposed to dehumanize them. So we would not have people ferried in trucks, queuing and falling over each other, running for meals in a very dehumanizing way, even where they will be accommodated. They would have to be accommodated in spaces that is even reassuring to their parents, that they are not vulnerable to vultures who might be roaming at the spaces where they are. So Swazis might still feel that, for instance, we want to retain Lusegwane and other cultural and customary practices that are dear to them. And then the king will or may play a role in such thing, but he will be far away from the government purse. He will be far away from decisions of state, especially of the executive and the legislature and the judiciary. He will be playing a role, if Swazis feel he must be retained, of someone where, if indeed Swazis are struggling to find each other, they may go to. So there will be other lessons that will look at how are the patriots in Lesotho doing it? How is the United Kingdom doing it? How is Denmark doing it? How is Sweden doing it? There are many countries who have kings that we think hold valuable lessons around how role does a king play in a democratic dispensation.
But now you're mentioning a point of the cultural activities which the king is supposed to be a custodian of, keep their sanctity and all of that. If you mention Umhlanga the way you're mentioning it now, it means then it's also not doing justice to it, to his powers now. I mean, that statement, like, as you said, it is more like a sex party for the royal people, the security forces and so on. It means a lot is taking place there at Umhlanga. At the Umhlanga, they just go there and choose, like the king has to choose a wife if he so wants from those young girls.
Look, precisely, Sizwe, because this current king has also appropriated Umhlanga for himself. You know, customary and cultural, Umhlanga is for the Queen Mother. It's not for the king. It's for the Queen Mother. So it was, and it is supposed to be a session where young girls who are proud of how they've conducted themselves, retain their virginity, do not have kids, will go to Gogo.
The King Mother.
The Queen Mother.
Queen Mother, sorry.
Gogo. To go and dance and celebrate and demonstrate to her that her teachings around the need to preserve yourself until you reach a stage where you get married, they are following it.
A man has to stay away.
A man has to be very far away from this. But alas, this one has appropriated it for himself. The Queen Mother has been reduced to a spectator of her own activity. And that's why this thing has been reduced into a sex party where he invites most of his friends, even from other countries, to come and watch. I remember he always, by the way, opportunistic. When Swaziland is to host any international or regional activity, he will make it to coincide with such activities so that the people who are in attendance can then also, he can invite them to go and witness.
Yes.
And then in the process, create a false impression that you can see even other regional and world leaders are endorsing and envious of these activities, of how we preserve our culture as a people. And those are the things that we are saying they would have to come to an end. We would make sure that there's no parent who has a sense of discomfort when her or his daughter is attending Umhlanga because he or she is assured that now shenanigans happen there. What has become now is that, it used to be open to people.
Yes.
Now, these soldiers and security forces are very strict around 6. They don't want any males roaming around there so that then they can have these kids to themselves. But even those that are dispersed excludes those who are close to the royal family, because this thing is happening in their own homestead. So we are not going to chase away a prince or a prince of a friend. A friend's prince from those sort of things. So yes, we will make sure that those things do not happen. The king is supposed to stay far away from Umhlanga. When he attends, he must attend when they are dancing for him, and he must leave. And the Queen Mother should assume her rightful role in terms of presiding over this event.
Okay. Now, it's always nice to talk to somebody who knows. We are in Swati, you know exactly what it is. And you are enlightening me now, because I was sort of lost there. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Let's go back to the struggle now, to the politics. Just keeping momentum of the struggle. Since 1983, up to now, you're still fighting the same battle. And I don't see, is the world hearing your screams about what you're looking for in Swaziland, the regime, the way the countries run? Is the international community really responding? Because I don't hear much.
maybe I must start by saying yes, but not to our satisfaction. You know, when we are involved in a struggle, it is always your desire that the world must be adequately responsive to your cries. But as a revolutionary, you get exposed to other struggles of the world.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing and appreciating that yes, the world must respond to our struggles, but we ourselves must appreciate that the world must also respond to a lot of other struggles that take place there.
Yes.
I mean, we are witnessing on a daily basis, for the first time in the history of humanity, televised genocide taking place in Gaza. The indiscriminate bombings in Lebanon. We are witnessing how Sudan is being run down right in front of our eyes. Elusive peace in DRC. The people of Western Sahara remains aspirational of their sovereignty. I'm mentioning all these things to try and say, asking me, who's a Swazi and leading a Swazi liberation movement, I feel the world is not responding adequately. However, I equally appreciate that the world has a competing interest coming all over. But I wanted to say, you know, having been established in 1983 and the struggle started even way beyond 1983. I was referring you to the early 60s and struggles of our people, and they even predate the formation of political parties. Swazis were involved in struggles for emancipation. Maybe we are guilty as Pudemo for not telling loud enough the successes that we have recorded. You know, when we were founded in 1983, Swaziland still had what was called a 60 days detention.
Yes.
I think in South Africa we had a 90 days detention. Yes. Now, President Mario and other founding members of Pudemo were victims of 60 days detention that was continuously renewed. How did it come to an end? It was Pudemo. Leaders who embarked on a hunger strike while in prison under 60 days detention.
Okay.
That brought to an end to 60 days detention. Now, there were a lot of pseudo-consultative processes that took place, particularly in the late 80s and early 90s, that were termed Vusela. Because when the king was coronated in 1986, he made an undertaking to the nation in 87 that he will consult with Swazis and introduce reforms. And he established successive Vusela. Vusela in Swati simply means consultation. Where he appointed a certain number of people to go and collate views from ordinary Swazis around what sort of changes they would want to see. And in one of the Vuselas, he appointed one of our comrades, Comrade Mandla Hlachwago, who refused to participate because the terms of reference, again, were not conducive for Swazis to express themselves without any reprieve. And Comrade Mandla felt that no. The terms of reference should be enabling for people to express their views freely. But we continued with our struggles. We made submissions. Part of the reason we have a constitution today, and the king appointed a constitutional review commission, wherein he also included in that commissioner, in those commissioners, our founding president, President Mario Masuku, was a result of ceaseless struggles of Pudemo. Now, but also there were the reforms in the industrial relations space, in the labor relations space. The struggles of the workers, early 90s, mid 90s, the 27 demands. Pudemo played a pioneering role in putting together the 27 demands, but also in anchoring those struggles. Like you correctly said, political parties are banned in Swaziland. So for Pudemo to live, it lived through these organs of people's power. So we would have Pudemo leaders and Pudemo members establishing trade union, leading trade unions, actively participating in trade unions. And those struggles cannot be divorced from the struggles of Pudemo. But we're not a movement that likes to appropriate to itself victories of people's struggles to partisan victories. But we are proud of the many struggles that we have led that have introduced reforms. It's just that the reforms are superficial in the sense that they don't talk to the core issues that we're talking about. But the reality of the matter is that every reform represents a bit of progress. I was referring earlier that we took the Suppression of Terrorism Act to court successfully, at least at the High Court, because we had a constitution, and the constitution came with it certain guarantees on certain rights, not what we want, but it's progress nonetheless. So it has not been 41 years of absolute no progress. It has been 41 years of progress. I mean, you look at women's rights. Women were not paid for maternity leave in Swaziland. Many of these rights that Swazis are taking for granted, including, by the way, the spaces that they are abusing at times by insulting other fellow Swazis and insulting us. You would not, in Swaziland, you would not say Viva without being arrested. They sing Nkosi Sikelela Africa freely now. We went to prison for singing those sort of songs. They are wearing their party t-shirts freely now because Pudemo members paid the price of pushing those boundaries that people must be allowed to express themselves and wear and form trade unions. These were not rights that were there in the past, including this direct election of parliamentarians. It was not there. It was something that was responded to because we fought that this thing of an electoral college that will choose from a pool that the king will give them on who they want to be parliamentarians must end. People must elect their parliamentarians directly. Of course, our demands, which stands up to now, was that through multi-party dispensation, but at least they're electing people. So there has been reforms.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It depends. I mean, you've been ticking boxes one step at a time, basically. So now, with the successes that we have had over time, what has been the King's attitude as you go along, taking one success after the other, slowly but surely? Is his attitude changing? Is he becoming more hard-headed?
Yes, because, and this explains why the king has so much deep hatred for Pudemo. Because he understands that the erosion, limited as it is, that has happened in terms of the excesses that he was enjoying in the past are a result of Pudemo struggles. That's why the king can live with the existence of some of most of these political parties. And that's why the only criminalized political party in Swaziland is the People's United Democratic Movement and its youth league, Swayoko. Because the king understands that if there is a party to be scared of, is this part. The rest of these other parties, the regime doesn't really care much about them.
Because, I've seen the mushrooming of new political parties. Lately we have Swalimo. And I was thinking to myself, there's EFF as well. There's a whole lot of others. Some I don't even know. But how is this affecting the struggle? Because now you've got too many voices. Is it helping in any way, or it is fragmenting the might of the struggle that we have been waging?
Well, two things there that are very important to note. We must not take it for granted that because these parties are established, they are established for the struggle and to fight for fundamental change.
Okay.
Some of these parties, and I dare to say most of them, are state-sponsored political parties. Now, I always say to people, the strength of the pawpaw tree is in its roots, not its trunk.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, for instance, one party. There is something weird about that party because the person who established that party because he said, and I'm not putting words into someone's mouth. He said it to a number of people. He is establishing that party so that he does not get excluded from the negotiating table. Remember, after 2021, there was this fora that we are now heading towards changes, and there will be negotiations, and felt that these ones of Pudemo and maybe the existing parties then will not include me in their delegations, in the dialogue. So I needed to establish an organization of my own so that also it can claim a seat in the negotiating table. Now, and that's why then I say the strength of the pawpaw tree is its roots. If you establish a political party for the wrong reason, it will remain a reactionary party. Now, so not everything that calls itself a political party in Swaziland is a political party that was established to bring about changes. I am not in the business of talking down to other political parties. But there are other political parties where even when you look close, you realize, this thing is fashion. It will disappear with fashion. By the way, in our 41 year of existence, we've seen political parties come and go in Swaziland as Pudemo. It's not new. Because these political parties that are formed for nefarious reasons other than advancing the genuine aspiration of emancipation for the people of Swaziland. They are like fashion. They will come and go. The only unfortunate thing is that some of them are causing harm in the morale of the people. But again, if you're a revolutionary and you take time to read about other struggles, you'll realize that actually this is not new. There will always be these parties that get formed for purposes of disruption, rather than purposes of strengthening the already existing parties.
I get you. Now that this brings me to the point of 2021. There was an insurrection. I mean, the strongest ever in Swaziland, as far as I know. People rose up because they demanded reforms. I don't know whether that those events, can you, like myself, describe them as the most effective, the biggest that the country has ever, or rather King Mswati has ever experienced? Those uprisings, were they the strongest, the biggest, the most impactful?
Maybe let me locate it contextually. 2000 and towards end of 2008, 2000 and then 2009, the world experienced an economic crisis. Swaziland, SACU receipts take a sharp decline. We find ourselves in a huge economic crisis. You would remember we approached you in South Africa for a 2.5 billion bailout, which we lobbied very, very strongly. The African National Congress and the government at the time, not to extend without conditions.
Yes.
And part of the conditions were conditions of reforms, because we were saying there's no need for Swaziland to be so hard hit if the monies that we receive from SACU, but also just in managing the economy, was not used to finance a lavish lifestyle of the king and the royal family. So we went through serious economic hardship. There was a reduction in terms of workers' earnings. The university allowance was significantly reduced.
Yeah.
I remember even salaries for members of parliament were reduced, though after the world had recovered. For them, it was readjusted. But for the university students, it was never readjusted. Now, I'm bringing this so that I explain why between 2011 and 2021, we went through a series of challenges. Because why there was a temporal pause in public celebration of things such as the King's birthday and certain excesses that the king does annually, because government was saying it is saving resources. As soon as we were out of that, the king and the government went to its old habit of splashing funds. But for the people, the wages were never significantly readjusted to increase. I mean, to demonstrate that we have recovered from the crisis.
So the austerity measures remained.
The austerity measures remain.
Something that is not of royal.
Yes, for almost 4 years, workers in the public service could not see earnings. Now, we in Pudemo, we met and developed a program of action, and we titled that decade, where it was we met in 2013. We said this is the decade of liberation. We said in this decade, it is the decade within which we must realize our liberation. We then worked towards making sure that that is realized. So to us as Pudemo, what happened in 2021 did not really surprise us. In actual fact, Sizwe, the momentum had picked up in 2018 and 2019, because you would remember during that period, the king procured 19 Rolls Royces. He procured a lot of BMWs. He expanded his largesse. Yet the quality of life for the Swazis continued to decline. So we picked momentum in 2018. There was a lot of student struggles, a lot of workers struggles. In fact, we were disrupted by COVID. I believe 2021 would have happened earlier had it not been for COVID. Now, of course, then COVID happened and add salt to injury, because Swaziland simply copied South Africa's response to COVID without having the buffer, the economic buffer that maybe South Africa had. You know, your 500 billion, the government could assist businesses here and there. Swaziland did not have that buffer because the resources of the country are being hogged by one man and his family. So when 2021 happened, we were not surprised. And we're actually saying it has been delayed. But we have always said that the people, when they rise up, there will not be a Pudemo to blame because we've been made scapegoats.
Yeah.
And that's why when there was that massive uprising, of course, we as Pudemo working together with other organs of civil society and political parties who were in existence at the time, but principally ourselves.
Yeah.
We were the ones who were making sure that we lead this petition delivery, including the drafting of this petition.
Yeah.
Of course, fortunately, we're the 3 members of parliament who were playing also a significant role in making noise in parliament, but also they had the wisdom, particularly Honorable Baqede Mduduzi Mabuza, to realize that parliament was not working. And he then realized that there is a need to work jointly with those who are pushing the struggle outside parliamentary.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm singling out Sizwe is one. Out of the 3 MPs, he was the only MP who had served previously in parliament.
Okay.
And during his first stint in parliament, they passed the vote of no confidence against the then prime minister.
Yes.
And the Constitution of Swaziland is clear what should happen when parliament passes a vote of no confidence. But the king simply decided to ignore them in such a way that 3 months later they went and reversed their own vote of no confidence. And it became a state target, which is why in the following elections in 2013, the state deployed all resources to make sure that it doesn't come back there in Hosea. Because of what he had done together with the other members of parliament in 2000. I think he was in parliament in 2008 to 2013, because in 2013 he didn't come back. So he only came back in 2018, which is why he was in parliament in 2021. So we think that that opportunity of 2021, the only reason that revolution could not reach its logical conclusion was because there was a coup. There's things that many people take it for granted. It was all over in the newspaper. There was an announcement by the army that we have now taken over. It was on the front pages of the Times of Swaziland. And that's why I'm calling it a coup, because how does the military say, when we have an executive that is led by an acting prime minister, who have now taken over? And what is the meaning of a takeover by a military? It can only mean a coup. Now, so the soldiers left the barracks. They were conducting the roadblocks. Remember, there was a curfew that was imposed. Shops were closing at 3. All of us were supposed to be inside our respective homesteads by 6. Otherwise, you will meet the wrath of the soldiers. And there were Swazis who were killed, by the way, for preaching curfew. So that's why in one of the things we were raising strongly with SADC when we were meeting them was the return of the army to the military bases. Up to now, we have never had either the king, who's, by the way, the commander-in-chief of the army, making a public declaration that the soldiers are now back in the barracks. And this explains why, up to this day, roadblocks are conducted jointly with the army. At times, the army would conduct on its own raids in communities. So what stood between the people power prevailing was the military power. And that's why so many people lost their lives. And that's why ever since, the king understands that he is indebted to the security forces.
Yeah.
He has now even transformed fire and emergency services into an extra component of security forces, and they are being militarized.
Yeah.
As opposed to be emergency services. So we think that that is what saved him. And for us, it was lesson learned. And I think as we continue this conversation, I will then speak to why then maybe a group of Swazis felt that there was a need for the employment and deployment of special means at times, because what stood between them and their emancipation became force. Unfortunately, we are not going to fight against military force using stones.
Yeah, but the coup, what form of a coup? So it means, are you saying that they were not ordered or deployed by Mswati, the king? They decided on their own, the army, to take over and quash the uprisings.
No, they were deployed by Mswati. Remember, Mswati is the commander-in-chief.
Yes,
they were deployed by Mswati.
Yeah.
When I'm saying coup, I'm talking a constitutional coup. Because the constitution of our country, when it comes to governance, at least to a very large degree, cabinet, as chaired by the prime minister, is the one that should be taking decisions in relation to regulation of what happened. So when I'm talking about coup, I'm talking about the soft constitutional coup where the executive or the cabinet, including parliament, powers were usurped by an introduction of an army. The army would never have been introduced without the authority of the commander-in-chief. The only person who's clothed with powers to take soldiers out of the base and deploy them is the commander-in-chief. I guess even here in South Africa, it's only President Ramaphosa who can authorize deployment. So the coup, at the forefront of it was Mswati himself. So it was a soft constitutional coup that made us realize that this so-called constitutional monarchical democracy is a facade. When the crown is threatened, this man can invoke a constitutional coup.